All right, all right. Thanks for tuning in. This is Scott and Sarah with the Crescive Method.
Hello, hello.
We're launching our live stream journey, I guess you could say.
Yep.
We're trying to answer the requests from the community at large in that we produce more content and we go live and we get out there. And so, want to thank everybody for stopping in. If you're watching live and you've got a question, drop it in the comments. We'll be able to pull it up on the screen and answer it. It does make it easier if you put a little Q, so it's easier for us to search. So thanks for coming in. We got the homie Fix the App right on here early and ready to go. So essentially, we just wanted to start getting on a program and start getting on a schedule to be able to communicate our message, share some of the things that we've learned in our large-scale professional work with the farming community at wide. And so our first effort into that is creating some master classes. And so today we just wanted to take some time and go over some of the master classes, show a little bit of case study, and if there's some comments or questions, we can go ahead and answer those. And so we're just going to go ahead and jump right in. And our first offering for this spring in 2022 is going to be our Crescive Method Basic Training Master Classes.
The foundation course for understanding everything. So you can manage what you're doing, understand what you're doing, learning all the effective strategies for establishing the soil food web, what works, what doesn't work, how to manage the system at a professional level, and all of the tips and techniques that go behind those successful cultivation.
Exactly. So during these master classes, we're going to be communicating effective strategies for establishing the soil food web in whatever style of farm or garden that you have. We're going to talk about how to manage living soil systems properly. And what we mean by properly is by measurement, by using the light microscope methods taught by Dr. Elaine Ingham, which is, in my opinion, the most powerful analytical tool for the farming process. And so that is the foundation for everything that we do. It's not the only thing that we do, but it is the foundation for all of our decision-making skills. Because if you're trying to grow a plant of any type, that is a biological organism. And if you can monitor the microscopic organisms in the soil, and there's anything that you're doing that causes a reduction or a destruction to those biological organisms, it's kind of like an early warning system to the entire biological system. So if you make an action on Monday and it reduces biological populations in the soil, you can start to expect 2 to 3 days later downstream effects on the other biological cells in that system, which is your plants. Sometimes those are visible immediately. Sometimes they're not visible for weeks or months. And I think that's the biggest obstacle for people having real success in living soil systems is understanding that the decisions you make today are affecting outcome many weeks later.
Yes.
And ultimately, we're going to be taking our large-scale professional consulting work, distilling it down into small focus groups or master classes, and we're going to teach you the latest science behind the cultivation techniques at literally the largest scales on the planet. And, Sarah and I don't talk about our work very often publicly, and we're going to kind of go outside the box and share a real case study today. But the reality is we've provided analytics and guidance to literally the top 1% in the entire cannabis industry on the planet. Yeah. We've advised governments, we've advised large cultivation crews and operations. We've provided analytics and advice to other consultants to support their work as they become more public-facing than maybe we are. So there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes that really not very many people know about our work. And so the goal for 2022 is to bring that work into the front and share it with a wider audience. Yeah. And so we're going to be, taking that science that we've learned in literally the largest scales on the planet and sharing it with
and the smallest,
farmers.
The smallest and the largest.
Yeah.
All outdoor, indoor.
True. Good point.
Greenhouses, anywhere.
Very, very true.
Yeah.
In 2021, we did make a very focused effort to reach the very small growers. And so now we're going to group smaller growers into master classes so that we can advance faster together.
Yeah.
What we found was that most farms that we work with one-on-one have the same 10 or 12 questions within the first 4 months of the consulting process. And so our hope is that if we can group 10 or 12 farms together at the same time, we can answer all those questions and move people quicker through the process to a higher ultimate goal. And with our desire and goals to keep up with YouTube content creation, we're going to be doing some regularly scheduled live events. And so tomorrow on January 23rd, same time, 12 p.m. Pacific time, we are going to be going over our soil balancing masterclass, which is going to be tomorrow. And so if you're missing this course live, you can join in tomorrow live. I'm going to be going over the course itself, and we're going to go over some foundational principles of mineral balancing and some common problems that I see in a lot of soil reports. And then we're starting a new series called Science Bro, where we try to unravel some of the misnomers and misconceptions of scientific phenomenon in the agricultural space. So in this live stream, it'll be on, for now, it's going to be Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We're going to be going over scientific publications. We're going to be talking about how to dissect scientific publications. We're going to be talking about common trends, popular things that people do that are maybe just outside of what science would agree is correct or incorrect. And we're just going to provide a forum for dissecting the scientific process as it applies to the agricultural space, with an overall goal of bringing up the level of understanding and capability of the average farmer to be able to discern the science involved with the agricultural process, so that you will be able to discern what information will be helpful to your farm and what maybe may not be helpful to your farm.
Yes.
And then coming back again next Saturday, we're going to do another Crescive Method Basic Training Masterclass, which is what we're doing today. So we're going to dive a little bit deeper into what we believe the Crescive Method is and some more components of the masterclass. And again, open up for questions for anybody that has some anything that they need answered regarding our masterclasses before we officially launch the course. And then again on next Sunday, January 30th, we're going to be doing another soil balancing masterclass live event. So we're going to be doing more live examples of soil balancing and being available for any questions regarding the soil balancing masterclass. And then, and then again on February 2nd, we'll be coming around for our Wednesday evening, 7 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Science Bro, period.
All right, so this is the 3 main classes that we're bringing to you. And it's basically to teach you literally everything that you need to know at the level at which you want to know it to manage this system that we're teaching. So we're starting with the Crescive Method Basic Training so that you can not be overwhelmed by all the nuances and details of soil balancing and microscope, but just learn how to do it, see the effectiveness of it in implementing the methods. Then we kind of introduce the next master classes to teach you how to take over, if you want to, the soil balancing for your living soil. What are those principles? What are the goals, the target ranges? What are the nuances and the decisions that need to be made for your context in your soil? And then finally, if you want to take it to the ultimate level, is learning how to read your soil, read the microbes in your soil. What are they telling you? Are we getting enough of them surviving? Are they thriving? Are they increasing in diversity and number? Are we going anaerobic somehow? Did we do something that made it go anaerobic because we know that before it wasn't? So you need to be able to trend your soil in real time. And that's what this class is for. It's not complicated spreadsheets. It's not measuring biomass. It's literally just learning how to identify the organisms and read what they are telling you and trend it over time so you can get a grasp of how you are doing in managing this microbial team that works for you. They do so much. So yeah, it's not meant to be heavy into the spreadsheets and measuring biomass. It's just learning how to read your soil and trend it over time so you can get that idea. So
But without being as complicated as the technique that Dr. Lane
Right.
teaches,
Yeah.
it's still very effective for quantifying what's happening in your soil. And so what Sarah has done in the microscope masterclass is taking the however many we've done, I don't even know at this point how many microscope samples we've analyzed, but nonetheless,
5,000
taking those very specific qualitative assessments and distilling them down into trends.
Yeah.
And so there are very clear trends when problems arise and when great outcomes arise. And Sarah's distilled that down into a very easy to access strategy for using the microscope and just simply counting organisms, entering them into a spreadsheet, and then not spreadsheet, but calculator tool that will be a web application.
I'm calling it a scorecard.
Scorecard,
So you can trend it over time and you can know what that score is and then keep track of what that score is. Am I
Exactly.
getting more diverse? Am I increasing in numbers and in the beneficials? Am I decreasing in the non-beneficials? And
Exactly.
those are the things that you need to know when you're managing living soil.
Exactly. And our overall goal with this course is to make a bunch of scientists. And so just like Fix the App is saying here, you don't trust the science, you trust the scientific method. And we're going to be teaching the scientific method so that we can basically create a crew of really qualified individuals. And, we're going to, bring it to 2022. And so...
So I guess we're going to talk about what is the Crescive Method. We talk about the Crescive Method. So what is it? It's kind of like a core philosophy of analysis, observation, and balance, right?
Exactly. And balance is the key cornerstone for us. We've found in the analytics of farms of all size that balance is much better than quantity or intensity. In the cannabis industry specifically, I guess all farming really, farmers tend to find something they like, one thing, one technique, one product, and they try to solve all problems with that one technique, whether it's tea brewing or whether it's amino acid nitrogen or whatever it may be. Farmers tend to try to drill everything with one hammer. And we've found that when you simply balance the components of the system, so balance nutrition, balance the chemistry in the soil, balance the soil organisms for higher level plants, most problems tend to fix themselves. And so balance is the main focus of our entire being, really, and helping the farmer achieve balance so that your ecosystem can be in balance.
And understand the components that make that balance.
Exactly. And again, we're very analytical people. We find that within the living soil community particularly, there's almost an aversion to quantifying your process, which we're definitely not with. We do several analytical techniques to keep track of things. You need to do soil chemistry. You need to monitor soil biology. On top of that, obviously environment is really important. So whether you're in the outdoor environment or you're in the indoor environment, managing that environment is extremely important. So we're very in tune to analytical processes from agriculture that are actually beneficial to the farmer. And in these courses, we will be bringing you up to speed with how to use these analytical tools, how to interpret them, and how to apply them to your farm.
Yeah.
But ultimately, observation is key. The most finely tuned, calibrated instrument on the farm is usually your eyes, or it should be. And we're going to work on observation techniques so that if the scientific analytical tools say that everything is fine, but your plant is indicating that things are not fine, then, obviously, the real-time observation of your plants is extremely important.
So like if your soil says you should have enough calcium, but your plant is saying, I don't know, something's up here, I'm not getting the calcium I need, that's what you pay attention to, and that's what you need to be able to fix.
Exactly. And so what do we mean by balance? Well, like I said before, we're focusing on balance before intensity. So instead of trying to increase nutrient strength, we're going to balance nutrient strength. Instead of increasing minerals in the soil, we're going to balance the minerals in the soil. We're after diversity over singularity in every single concept of the agricultural process. So we're not focusing on just one bacteria like EM1 or even a
Right.
packaged bacterial product. We are looking for as much of the soil food web as we can possibly cram into your soil. And same with minerals. We're not trying to focus on one nitrogen. We're being diverse in our nitrogen applications. We're looking for water soluble, plant available nitrogen, as well as long-term nitrogen, things like that. And then once we've balanced the components of the system, then we start to increase intensity. And what we found in our commercial work, where stability comes from balance. And the larger you go in scale, whether that's going from 4 plants to 40 plants or 4,000 plants to 40,000 plants, if there's an imbalance, it magnifies remarkably. And simply correcting the imbalances on the farm almost every time will bring about the appropriate commercial yields or higher than commercial yields. And so we don't need to increase the nutrient loads, so to speak. We just need to increase balance a lot of times.
And availability too is part of that, yeah.
Exactly.
Which is the microbial component. So
yeah, good point. And so when we balance the soil food web, it also increases the intensity of the nutrients, so to speak, because they're becoming more available.
That's right.
And just kind of to reiterate the core components of what we're after, we're putting the soil food web organisms as the foundation and cornerstone of everything that we do. If we find that there's something that we like doing from a strategy or a nutrient application process, and it reduces soil food web organisms, then it's out or it's adjusted. We don't do anything that reduces soil food web organisms.
That's right.
And then we are not relying only on the soil food web organisms. We are also find it's extremely important to balance minerals and nutrition.
Yeah.
So from your fertilization strategy to the soil chemistry, we are keeping all of those in balance.
Yeah. This is especially important in engineered soils, but it's actually also important in native soils as well. I think that observation from our perspective has shown that the soils today actually because of the way that a lot of soils have actually been treated with massive tilling, typically a lot of pesticides. It just depends on where you're at. Well water can be completely atrocious in some of these agricultural areas. So you really have to take into consideration that the minerals may be there, but there's so much going on that can contribute to an imbalance, functionally speaking, that you really have to address what's happening on that side of things. So we find that if you may be able to get away with just using the soil food web in some contexts, but oftentimes it's higher yield, higher outcome if you also take into consideration the balance of the minerals and nutrition.
Well, yeah, when we first started professionally consulting, we only addressed the soil food web organisms, and we brought about tremendous benefit to the farms we worked with. It was very common to come in and correct soil biology, whether through practices, so what we would call cultural practices, so how you apply your tea, how you dispense your extract, how you dispense your nutrients, how you behave in your cultivation space.
All those little details.
Those are all called cultural practices. And so by the first 2 years of our professional consulting, we only corrected soil food web organisms, so process, practices, things like that. And it was very common to get a 30 to 40% increase in pretty much every category. So yield, quality, potency, reduction in reduction in time to maturity. So it was very common that by improving soil biology, we were able to reduce a week of the cannabis life cycle, which is pretty remarkable. And so again, we're balancing all these components of the system, not putting any one of them above the other, because it's a holistic system. And as you change one component, there's downstream effects on literally everything else that you do.
Yeah.
And when you get these things right, boom, success. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. All right, let's jump into case studies.
All right. So we wanted to take a second to go through one of our case studies. This was a farm from this past season.
Saludos
And,
from Paraguay.
oh, what's up? We got a student. There you go. We got a student in here from Paraguay. What's up?
Some quick shout outs.
Quick
Smiley's
shout outs.
Garden.
Yeah.
Fix the app.
Yeah.
Go Die.
Yeah. Bear with me
Michael.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah. What up, Smiley? Smiley's a great dude. We need
Yeah.
to get Smiley on the podcast.
Yeah, Smiley.
Yeah. We need to
Welcome
set up a
anytime.
time. So, anyways,
All right.
there's a lot of buttons going on here. Bear with us. But we wanted to go over case study because that's one of the biggest complaints is that we don't go over our work. And I think people need to understand that our contracts specifically forbid that, really. But this is one we are able to talk about. This was one that happened last year. This was a large-scale commercial farm in California, subject to all the testing. And we showed up week 1 of flower, which is something we never do.
Yeah.
We started doing that in the first year of our work, and it's very complicated, honestly, and things can get hairy. And for those of you that are actually Soil Food Web grads that are moving into consulting, definitely don't advocate starting mid-harvest cycle.
Yeah, once you're committed to a path, it's hard to shift the direction of the boat midstream. So that's why we tend to not do it. But this case, we did.
And another problem is if there is an imbalance and you add biology, you're going to magnify whatever that problem is. And so if there's a nutrient deficit causing the problem and you add biology, you're going to accelerate that deficit. And so you're definitely not going to want to do that. So in this particular case, we did come on. The reason why we came onto this project, it was fairly nearby. They had an extremely solid crew. One of their employees had already gone through the Soil Food Web courses. And so we felt like they had the components that we could make this mid-harvest entrance successful. Because it is important for us, you know, Sarah comes from nursing. My mom was a nurse. We've both spent a lot of time in hospitals. And the Hippocratic oath of, medical professionals is to do no harm.
Yeah.
And so
We apply that to our work as well.
yeah,
So.
and part of that's being conservative. But
Yep.
nonetheless, you can see the plant on the right. It has tremendous hooking of the leaves, which is not a good sign. And there was extreme nitrogen toxicity. This particular farm was 10,000 square foot of canopy. 4 of the greenhouses had remineralized soil from previous years where they had done outdoor legacy cultivation. And this was amended in the same way that they do every year. Greenhouse 5 through 7 were new builds, and they purchased a new soil. This was a really undesirable soil mix, something that would be very problematic. It had roughly 3 times the desirable nitrogen levels. In some cases, it was 4 or 5 in some of the greenhouses. And it had roughly half the desirable calcium levels. And so for any of those people that understand mineral balance, this is the chemistry formula for pests. Yeah. And problems. So
that's just the mineral side.
Yeah, and that's just the mineral side.
Yeah.
And so there was some mite pressure pretty evenly spread out through all 7 greenhouses because of this. So we had to make very aggressive adjustments to the nutrient levels, far more aggressive than we typically do. But again, we felt like we could pull it off. They had also been doing some tea brewing, very mild tea brewing processes on the scale of things, but it still was contributing anaerobic organisms, which were transferring to the soil. And there was a little bit of powdery mildew here and there.
Not enough good guys, far too many bad guys.
Yeah, so low nutrient cycling, slight pest and disease pressure going into flower, which is pretty much the opposite of what you do.
Yeah.
What they did have going through them was a literally exceptional crew. The manager of the farm was extremely high level of intelligence, very analytical. He knew a lot about his process. He was a good farm manager. And that was really the main reason why we decided to take this project midstream, is because you can have the best information in the world, but if the farmer is not very good at managing their system, it's going to be difficult to teach a new system that then needs to be managed. So we saw that this farm manager was quite good at managing his system, managing his crew. So we figured we could pull it off. Here's another view of one of the greenhouses. This is week 1 of flower. Typically in the commercial space, you want to see most of those trellis cells full of colas. So we're maybe 30 to 40% less biomass than this farmer would probably like to see at this time, and likely had at this time last year. And then this is the same greenhouses 2 weeks before harvest, and they literally grown outside of the greenhouse. We filled them with so much cannabis. This is a top view of the greenhouses that we were able to balance calcium and correct nitrogen. Again, you can see that is an absolutely beautiful canopy. The crew doing the management of this was just really top tier, top 1% of the cannabis industry as far as skill, practical experience in the California commercial space, and ability to execute. So, that's just a sexy canopy from my opinion.
And at this point in the story, they were very happy because this was top quality and they knew they'd be able to get top price at that point in the market before everything else happened.
Yeah, it did fall to shit, which is going to be our next series, which is surviving the crash. But for right now, so in these greenhouses, nitrogen wasn't excessively toxic. It was on the higher end of things. We were able to make some pretty heroic calcium applications and bring this into balance. So as far as hitting the goals for balance, we were able to pull it off on 5 through 7. 1 through 4, we made a considerable improvement. And then at the start of next season's harvest, it will be able to be in balance, and then they'll be able to start this coming spring's effort from a balanced state and likely have even better results next year.
Yeah.
Here's an inside view of 5 through 7 where the yield was a little bit better. Those are 5-foot beds. It's completely boxed out, as they say. Here's a side-by-side. I'm still trying to improve my photo taking ability. Just coming from the legacy markets, you don't ever take pictures. So I'm still really bad at taking pictures. But what I'm trying to illustrate here is on the left, you have, this is the same genetics, by the way, exact same clone, exact same cut from the same farm. On the left is from the soil that we were able to bring into balance, not nitrogen toxic. Plant on the right was in the not quite adequate calcium, but as much as we could have humanly applied in one harvest cycle, and even it was quite aggressive, to be honest. But when you looked at these plants up close, there was noticeable quality increase on the plants on the left. There was noticeable frost increase on the plants on the left. And then you can tell from this photo, hopefully, that there's considerably more flower sites and yield density. The cola's a lot more filled in. On the right, a lot of the colas aren't even popping through the trellis. You're missing a couple nugs here and there on each cola. And there was a very measurable yield variation in these greenhouse sets. Yeah. So it's extremely important to have balanced chemistry. So here we were making a very positive impact on biology. We made an increase in all categories, but I think this is a very strong argument for why you cannot neglect soil chemistry, and why would you want to, really? Yeah. So it's kind of my opinion. So Godai is asking, is the upcoming live event free? Yes, everything I put on the schedule, these are going to be live YouTube events just like this one. And so we're going to be doing regular live broadcasts. The courses now are a paid course, and it will be private, obviously. But we will be making regular contributions to YouTube Live. So be sure to check in, stay in tune with the...
We did also make it so that you can do installment payments for the courses as well. So we know what's going on in the world today, and that things are just crazy as far as economy, and people's budgets are just all over the place. So we've made an installment plan for you so that if that is something that is much more reachable for you and you still want to join the classes, you can do that as well.
Yeah. So the Crescive Method Basic Training class is $900. The soil balancing course is $600, and the microscope course is $900. To give you a comparison, our professional consulting rates for a site visit, if we're going to come to your farm and help you on site, that's a 2-day requirement at a $2,000 per day rate. So last year, we spread that out into a 4-month distance consulting relationship for between $1,400 and $2,000 for a 4-month period. Now we're doing a MasterClass for $900. And then we're allowing payment arrangements if that's necessary. So, we're still, charging, a decent amount from certain people's perspective. But this is a remarkable deal for what we've typically charged in the past.
The goal of this, though, is really to get you functionally managing the system on all 3 levels. So functionally managing how to actually implement the system, functionally managing your own soil minerals, if that's what you choose to do as well. Like, well, you should be able to do that before you leave the class. And then that's also the goal with the microscope, is to actually functionally be able to read your soil in the class. So we're really trying to get people's skills up, having success with this system, understanding what it takes to have success and those nuances. So, we think that if you're going to be dishing out some money, that you actually ought to come away with actual skills when you're done with it, not just the science behind it. So that's kind of why we're doing what we're doing. So, yeah.
Yep. And then, so here's a side-by-side of the greenhouses. So on the left, we have 5 through 7, where we were able to balance calcium and manage nitrogen. On the right, this is 1 through 4. And we were able to make considerable improvement, but again, not eradicate the excessive nitrogen, and make a decent effort in getting it up to the appropriate levels of calcium. Unfortunately, we had a pretty wicked storm this year, and it tore the greenhouses apart. This is an external depth greenhouse. I'm personally shocked this type of shit's even legal to sell. People buy these and they try to save money, and 100% of the time, I have seen these things blow to shit, and it's terrifying for the crew. People think they're going to die. It's extremely dangerous. I can't even believe this stuff's illegal. But nonetheless, complete disaster. Flooded a couple of the greenhouses, the 1 through 4 that were harvested 2 weeks later than 5 through 7. So luckily, 5 through 7 were able to be harvested before the storm, but 1 through 4 did suffer. So just to recap, we started the project at week 1 of flower, came into significant nitrogen toxicity and calcium deficit. Weather destroyed one of the greenhouses, and there was considerable flooding in 2 or 3 of the greenhouses, which there was a sizable loss to bud rot. Even with the bud rot and even with the losses, the yield that was able to be packaged and presented to the market was still 10% over last year's harvest. And that's pretty heroic from a consulting standpoint.
How was the biology when you arrived to the farm? So it wasn't great. It was definitely half or less than what it needed to be for this particular crop. So, and there were a lot of imbalances, far more omycetes than there should be. I think there was about 30 to 40% omycetes to beneficial fungi. And so it was, but again, the beneficial fungi were in no numbers to actually compete. So it was almost neck and neck, slightly less omycetes, but certainly the beneficial fungi were not winning the war. There was nothing really going on too much. So there were some issues right away that we could tell with the tea brewing not necessarily even being successful, and then on the path to putting it out, all those little details matter as far as successfully transplanting these organisms you spent all this time brewing into your garden. So there's some nuances that need to be taken into consideration when you're using tea and extract, and when to use them and how to use them. Those are the things that we'll go over in the class, So, and how to put them out properly, how to make sure that you're not going to be inheriting any filth and flarn, as Scott likes to say.
That's what they call it on the
they
test.
They call it
filth and flarn.
So anyway,
Yeah.
so very out of balance. And that was one of the very first things that we addressed. And how they were managing the microbial terrain also needed to be addressed, because even if you make the best tea in the world, even if you make the best extract in the world, even if you get that successfully into your soil, if you don't know how to manage the terrain once they're there, you can go anaerobic very easily. So those are the nuances that will teach you how to discern as you learn how to manage this living soil system. So lots of details, lots of things to manage, moving parts. But once you get it, once you understand what you're looking for, how to use the data that you're getting, it should make a lot of sense. And then if you go on to do the soil balancing and the microscope masterclass, then you can start to guide your own process.
There's a question here. Do you need a microscope for the classes?
You would need a microscope for the microscope masterclass, and that's the whole goal, is to get you up to speed with managing your own. But you don't need a microscope for the first two, obviously. So
for soil balancing and the basic training, you don't need a microscope, but you definitely would want one to be able to apply the principles of the microscope course.
Yeah.
But I guess we should mention that all the classes, if you sign up now. This first round is live one-on-one. We're going to do an hour or two of instruction. Then we're going to do an hour or so of Q&A for each class. And then we're going to be putting together packaged videos of those 5-week modules that will be available to students for a calendar year.
Yeah.
So if you could start the microscope class now and then over the next year get a microscope. But one of the things that we think is important is that we've noticed that when somebody has the opportunity to immediately apply what they've learned, it sticks.
Yeah.
And so it's probably best that,
Yeah. I will say also that on the Crescive Method Basic Training, it comes with all the data that you're going to need to know to manage what we're talking about. So you're going to be getting bioassays with the price of the class, three of them. And you're going to be getting the soil balancing part of that, the soil chemistry. So you're going to learn how to get that data and put it into functional application to guide your space. And what does that mean? What are the decisions that need to be made for your context? So that's the whole point.
Yeah. And we are splitting up the classes because that's been one of our complaints, is that when I went through Dr. Lane's courses in 2014, you could take a compost course, you could take a microscope course, you could take the foundational courses. And now I think it's amazing that they've elevated up into, essentially a trade school or a small university level education, which then does make it out of the reach of a lot of people, which is kind of not the goal. And so we're just trying to provide support to Dr. Lane's program and try to fill that grassroots role of allowing affordable, accessible options for people that want to take the leap into this.
Yeah. So when I very first announced all 3 classes, I was going to make a prerequisite that you'd have to take the Crescive Method Basic Training first before you took the microscope class. But I've since opened that up. I've decided that you just need to be able to piece together what it is that you need to where you're at. So it is geared towards growers though. So if you've already taken Elaine's classes, and maybe you don't want to take the microscope class, and maybe you just want to do soil balancing as a complement, something like that. This is just meant for you to jump in wherever it is that you want to start. I assume that if you're jumping in at the microscope part, that you have one and you're a fan of living soil and trying to utilize living soil anyway, because why else would you do it? So, so that's the reason why we've broken them up and just letting people feel free in something, these days.
Yeah. And
So-
we will be doing regular live streams. So for those of you that can't jump into the courses, we will be providing, more case studies and practical applications. We're going to be doing some science project type stuff, do some tea brewing. Sarah's going to be doing some live streaming with her microscope.
Yep.
So next Saturday when we do the basic training live stream, we were going to do some microscope videos so that we can see what that's like,
Yeah.
and just kind of keep it moving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a quick read or something like that.
Yeah.
Just going with the flow of what people request and want. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Any other questions about what we're doing, what we're
Yeah.
up to?
Is there any other questions or?
I do want to say we really want to build community around this. So it comes with a forum so that we can all chat and have each other's back in this. And a lot of people have the same questions, or maybe it's the same type of issue but in a different context, so it might feel different. But we get to address them together, and I don't know. So you have access to that for a year as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's something we didn't mention. So, along with the MasterClass training, you'll have access to our private forum. And so you'll be able to log in anytime you wish and ask any sort of questions. The MasterClass Basic Training is launching around Saturday 5th, right? February 5th?
Yes.
Yeah. And we're still working on a time period. So if you put in an application to be in the course, one of the things that we ask of you is to define what times you are available.
Yeah, all times you're available.
Yep. And then from that, we're going to aggregate people into a class. We are going to limit the class size because we've primarily been working one-on-one with very intense relationships, and we don't want to jump to teaching 50 people at a time and somehow compromise our ability to educate. So through this first round, we are going to limit the class size so that we don't get in over our head from managing a bunch of students. And we want to just make sure that we provide the quality of education and experience that we've been providing to our commercial scale consulting clients. And so,
Yeah.
and then in order to,
I was laughing at Smiley's, out of context there. Smiley just made a comment and made me laugh, so.
Smiley's making the jokes.
Yeah.
We have a habit of bringing out the cooties.
Yeah,
But it's whatever. People are going to react to their level of understanding and consciousness, and you can't get mad if mad people get mad. But anyways, we're pushing through this year, and so we're going to work in small classes. If we get a very strong divergence in the availability that people have for a time slot, then we're considering splitting it up into 2 nights per week. But we're just going to approach that as we come. And so jump on over to the website if you're interested. That's cressivesoil.org, and go to the Learn tab, and you can see the master classes.
So Jonathan Morris said he's signed up for the classes, have not started yet. I'm in a soil food web consultant training as well. So one thing that just from the Soil Food Web Foundation courses, you get a lot of the science behind it and a little bit of the how-to, but there's not a lot of how to actually apply the method in the field. So that's what this is geared toward. It's geared toward actually learning how to apply the methods in the field. So yeah.
Yeah, and we do have plans to do whoops. Blew it. Excuse me. Sorry. There's a lot of buttons here. I'm still learning. We are at some point going to offer a consultant training program that's down here. It hasn't launched yet. That'll be later on, maybe this spring or summer. We've realized that one of the ways that we can help the community most is just get people really prepared. And, the last couple of years have been quite bizarre and a little bit uncertain. And, it's not really sure what the future holds.
Yeah,
and,
it's a wild world.
Yeah, it's a wild world right now. And so we just figured the way that we can serve the agricultural community best is to take what we've learned and create a large forum of people that are extremely qualified to educate farmers on a successful path that keeps organic farms in business.
Yes.
And
wildly successful.
Yeah.
That's what we want. Not just in business. Wildly successful.
Yeah.
That's what we want.
Yeah, exactly. And so we got a question here for about a microscope. Yep, we'll maybe that's one. Whoa, that was a little quick. Sorry about that.
I will put also links. We can do it now or whatever you want to do, but I will also put links, when you sign up for the class of what microscopes to put. This one that we have in the background actually is really a lovely one. Do you want me to get it?
No, I'll just leave it there.
All right.
That's a Meiji MT31. That's a really solid microscope. It's battery operated. It has very high quality objectives. It does have a camera on top, which isn't super suited for Macintosh platform. It's better for the PC platform. But we have had some people get it to work with Macs. That's one we travel with because it's so durable. You can't hardly knock it out of focus. You can't hardly break it.
Yeah.
That's our second one. The first one is what we took to most site visits for like 2 years. And it was remarkable at holding up. It has high quality plant objectives, but it is about a $600 microscope. If you're a Soil Food Web student that plans to be a consultant, that's probably one I would consider starting with, just because it's going to last you. When we started out as consultants, we got the little $300 unit that's most often suggested on Dr. Elaine's pages, and that does work. It's just once you become a professional and take it with you, you end up spending more money keeping it in focus than you ever did to buy it. And we bought 2 of those originally and wore them out in the first year and a half, which was more money than the Meiji that lasted over 2 years. So
the objectives are going to matter. If you plan on spending a lot of time at the microscope, I would consider, and I'll probably do them in a couple of different categories: low price, best average, best all-around type price for some certain components, so objectives and also ergonomics. If you're doing it a lot like me, you can blow out your neck, which I've done, just by straining your neck a little bit forward. So how you position yourself in the scope and the type of scope, does it kind of force that?
Yeah.
Sitting at the scope a lot like that is gonna wreck your neck a little bit. But if you're just doing it as a grower and you're just jumping
it's not
on,
gonna be moving.
Yeah, it's not gonna be moving, and you're not gonna be doing multiple labs for lots of people all the time, then maybe that's not something you need, and you can go with a little cheaper, more inexpensive models. So
we have like 9 microscopes in this office, so we'll make a video. We'll lay them out on the table. We'll talk about them.
Yeah.
Talk about the benefits and the negatives, and kind of where we would start based on what your goals are. Anyways, I think that's all we got for today. It's been about an hour, and thank all the people that joined in live.
Yes, thank you so much for coming.
And,
thanks for being, in the fight with us.
And we appreciate those of you that are joining for the replay. If you missed the live stream, make sure and check in to the schedule for the upcoming live streams, and we'll see you there.
Oh,